Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to start, and I appreciate your patience. We were waiting for people to move their cars. I just want to make an announcement. If you're parked right outside the front of the building with parking, we don't know, it says no parking. So it's best to park either across the street or at Flame Broiler if you haven't had the opportunity to do so. Okay, I'm really grateful. I'm in church. I'm an old school girl, so I first have to give honor to God, who's the head of my life, who will always be the head of my life. I'm really grateful for you guys being here today. I wrote so many things down that I wanted to talk to you about. You guys come right on in. And it didn't matter what I wrote down. I want you to hear my heart. So my name's Brandy Murdoch. I have lived in Carson for all of my life. I'm 41 years old. I have 2 children that I am also blessed to raise in the home that I bought the home that I grew up in, and I get to raise my children here in Carson. So this is personal for me. This is bigger than just this situation. This goes beyond this. This goes for our children and their children, and it's why I'm here. Many of you may know that my nonprofit, Murdoch Community and Care Services, Inc., had the opportunity of going out to the Carson Community Center parking lot and really meeting people firsthand and understanding what was going on. And what prompted me to do that, many people don't know the story is one night I was sitting, and you're probably in the come right on in, in the Facebook group where H2S, and they're talking about symptoms. And there was a mom, and the mom had 2 children. And one child was in one arm and their nose was bleeding, and the other was in the other arm vomiting, and their head was hurting profusely. They did not know what to do. And because I'm a mom, that resonated for me. And we sprung into action. And when I made the call to the community came out. And as we were out there, we learned that this is something that affected several people across our community, and not just in a way where it was sickness or physical, it was a mental thing. So people were thinking, am I having symptoms? Am I not having symptoms? Is something going with me? Is it something messing with my psyche? I see a lot of you shaking your head because it feels like, or could feel like, you're alone. And in the moment where we expected government to step in for us, it was different. And we would have liked to see it differently. I would have liked to see it differently. And so because of that, I did some homework, and we went out and we filed claim forms for with the community. And in doing that, it was behooving to me that there was not a location or anyone that we as residents could call specifically and get specific help. There was a van that was out, the county van that was out. However, if you didn't go to the van, if you didn't know what was going on, if you didn't know that there was an issue that was happening, you did not know how to get help. And many people who are probably here have gotten the help, but you understand the circumstances of what happened when you got the help. A lot of you were moved from hotel rooms. Many people had to pay for a second car if they had more than one car at certain hotels. There were people that were housed in one place and had to be sent over to another place. And so this is not a vendetta. This is just to say, hey, we as a community expect our officials to be there for us in a state of emergency. The state of emergency was called by the council. They deemed it a state of emergency. The city of Carson did. And then the county also deemed it a state of emergency. However, there was only $100,000 that was put aside for close to 100,000 residents. That's less than $1 a day. And many of you have seen not only what happened in the interim, but the aftermath. And so what's really near and dear to me is really teaching our community. Let me there's a couple things that I want to talk about. So the overall lack of response, the resulting community impact, and the importance of community mobilization. So the mobilization part is important. If you look online, there's a lot of us that are complaining, but there's not much work that is being done. So to see all your faces today means a lot. I commend you. Thank you so much for being here. I want you to know before I get in front of you, I've done my homework. I know who I talk to, and I'm first and foremost led by God. It's what I do. I cannot hide it. I will not hide it. In the response to this, many people felt lost. And because they felt lost, there is a mantra that I live by, and that says, be the change that you wish to see. And because people needed to know what to do, we set up the shop and we did that, and we helped several people in the community. So many of you have filled out claim forms, and now this will take you to what the next step is. And we at Murdoch Community have not just put anything in place as it pertains to me hiring a law firm, which I really like, and I will talk about them later, but this was important to me for mobilization. So Murdoch Community has put together a system. We will be calling you and asking you to become involved in things, because I am one person, and one person has to have other people. There's a saying that says, if you want to go alone, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. We get to do this together. We get to do it together. Some of the firms are not accepting clients anymore. I was very adamant about having a firm that came into our community that was willing to partner with us. And McCoon Wright Arevalo is just that, and you will see it. And my goal today is for you to see exactly what I've seen in them. They've come in from our very first meeting. They were asked, and I hope this is okay with you, Mr. McCoon, but one of the things that was very important to me was how a firm came into our community and it not just being about dollars. That was huge for me. And McCoon came forth and said, that's not what it's about. It's about making change in communities, and we've done it. They've done huge lawsuits against like Wells Fargo for NSF fees that a lot of communities that don't have the money to pay those NSF fees benefited from because of them stepping into the realm, in the legal realm, and making sure they were advocates for our community. And so that's why I trust them. The other thing, very plainly, when you sign up with them and you're a Carson resident, it's 25%. That's what it is on a settlement basis. That's huge. If many of you have done your homework and you've looked at other contracts, it's 40% and higher. And these people are worth their weight in gold. They have come together. They have made sure that all the forms that you need are available. They have added things on websites to make sure they're available. They have helped create infrastructures for us. They are partnering with us. And not only are they coming in to help us with this, they're also coming into our community to be sure that you're not lost in this. If you have questions, you have somewhere to go to. You have someone who can answer those questions. Many people, I know you've heard it, have said they've signed up with people. They don't know who they signed up with. They don't know how to follow up with them, and so they need assistance with that. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're going to make sure that we do. And I need you to know that I am in this with you. We are in this together. This is not a vendetta. This is not something that I'm doing because of notoriety, although many of you know I've run for council. But this was more important to me because we get to be treated fairly. Bottom line. And no, I'm absolutely, you can clap on that. We get to be treated fairly. And for us to have our city point the fingers at the county, for me, we get to do better than that. Other cities that we hear say, hey, if this was this city, or oftentimes people say, if this had happened in our city or in this city, it would have been different. And what you don't know is because it's different because the city steps in for their residents whenever they're injured by someone else. In our case, it felt like we were alone, and I need you to get this. The city called this a state of emergency. That is equivalent to if it was a hurricane or like Hurricane Katrina. That's equivalent to if there was an earthquake and all of our houses fell down. So if this is how they took care of something in a state of emergency, thank God it was something that we could evacuate from and not something we had to depend on them for right here in our city. Because when emergency come, you can't go to Long Beach and say, I need help. You can't go to Torrance and say, I need help. You can't go to Orange County and say, I need help, because you're a resident of Carson. And that is why this is extremely, extremely important, you guys. I need you to get fired up about this. I need it to be important for you as well, because what you will notice is when the numbers taper off, the assistance stop. There are horror stories of people that have filled out their documentation, that have filled out their paperwork. The county is questioning whether or not they live in Carson. When we're in a state of emergency, we don't have time to question whether or not somebody lives here. For them to admit that the channel has not been maintained in over 10 years, that's an issue. That's a really big deal. And so we get to make noise behind that because we are the community and they are our leaders. And I mean that same thing when I am there one day. That's a privilege to be there to represent people. And we get to make sure that they do what is in our best interest for us. And so this will be I'm totally for that. This will be a blueprint for not just us, but for other communities. So when government entities are required to step in for them, they know that we have the blueprint on how to get it done. And what's gonna get it done is mobilization. So when our volunteers call, please come on in, don't be shy, come on in. Hey, Dr. Celia, when our volunteers call you and they ask you how you want to be contacted, we are going to make sure that we contact you that exact same way. Our senior community, which I call our wise counsel community, getting on the computer and doing things on the phone is just not something that you're interested in doing, and it is okay. But there needs to be someone or something that is available to help you. And so we're committed to making the phone calls whenever we need you to mobilize, but we also need your commitment that when we ask you to come out, you will come out. If you don't like to talk on the phone and you like it to be a text message, if our volunteers ask how you would like to be contacted, let them know text message. And I'm gonna be quite frank. If you just don't want to be involved and you just want to sit on the wayside, please don't give us your contact information. And I mean that sincerely because we get to do this together. We get to vie together. And we also get to, in the interim of it, if something comes up, communicate with each other. That's all I ask. It's very simple. So today, at this forum, I wanted you to be able to have answers to the many questions. And one of them being around health. A lot of people are wondering, is this long term? We've all lived in this community for a very long time. I'm sure there's people that have lived here a very long time. And there's other things that we are concerned about. Is this a cover-up? Are there symptoms that we're having personally that we're not talking about? And those symptoms are a side effect of the hydrogen sulfide. And so we're gonna have Dr. Dora come and speak to us. Dr. Gio from Public Health, thank you so much. And then USC, you guys are here. Raise your hand, Dora, Arbor, please, so they can see you. This is really huge, and they're gonna come and speak to us. They are documenting what is happening as it pertains to health concerns. That's major, you guys. And that data can tell how we're treated in comparison to other communities. However, if they don't have the data, they can't help us. So when they ask you to do the survey takes a couple minutes. They're right outside. They have the surveys with you. Please do them and ask the people in your community to do them as well. Before I go, are there any questions? I'm going to introduce Dr. Dora, and let me say a little bit about Dr. Dora. When I first met her through the firm, and I'd like to introduce each of you because it's important. When I first met Dr. Dora, she came on the team. Now, she is a part of the firm's team that is directly for public health. That means what's going on and how we can help you with the effects of that. When we met for the very first time, her response after she sat and she watched to see what was going on was, come on in. Well, her response was, I don't only want to tell what the side effects or the health effects are, I want to provide solutions. And that's what this is about. It's about being solution oriented. And so I'm so grateful to partner with this team. And Dora's going to come and talk to you about some of the effects that you may still be experiencing and how you can get assistance with that, okay? So if you guys would just give her a round of applause for me, because it takes a lot to be up here. It really does. Dora, thank you.
Well, that's a tough one to follow, Brandy. Just thank you for that kind introduction. But I really want to start by just saying I'm sorry that I'm here today. As Brandy mentioned, I'm Dora Barilla, and I'm a doctor of public health. And I've actually worked mostly in healthcare and public health departments. And all around the country, I can continue to see communities that are impacted by environmental hazards. So that's exactly what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. I want to really focus in on not only the hazards that you've been exposed to, but I want to talk about how you protect your health, how you protect your family's health, and how you protect your community. And we want to be here with you along the journey as well, so that we're just not reacting, but we're also putting mitigation and we're acknowledging and doing some medical management to make sure that your long-term health is protected, because that's really the most important thing. If you don't have your health, it's really challenging to just go through life. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'm very sorry for all of the exposures and really distress that you guys have been through, because it's real. It's very real. It's not that we haven't had enough trauma over the last couple of years in terms of our health and all the things that we've experienced. And to add one more thing to that is really challenging. So what I'd like to do is, I'm just going to open it up. I don't want to, I know it's Saturday morning and I don't want to get too much into science, but I do want to just provide you guys with some resources and, just to make things real. Because in addition to, some of the physical ailments that you've had, I'm sure a lot of you are having anxiety about whether or not you're, are you imagining this? Are you smelling this? And would really like to talk through a little bit about the mental well-being of all of the community of Carson, so that you guys can move forward and really be protected. I don't think I need to probably tell you what some of the symptoms of hydrogen sulfide contamination are. You've probably experienced that quite a bit. But I do want to just validate some of those things that you've been experiencing and talk through a little bit of them, because, I'm sure that you're all a little bit concerned about any exposure that you've had, especially, in the time of just, continued insults and threats to, in our environment, just with the pandemic. But I want to assure you one thing, that hydrogen sulfide doesn't accumulate in your body. But what we are concerned about are the prolonged exposure to hydrogen sulfide. So want to make sure that you guys are not only addressing what's happened over the past several months, but also protecting you as you move forward. So just a few things in terms of the exposure. It's really in the air, and you guys can smell it. Hydrogen sulfide is it is a hazardous gas. And so you probably realized it has a smell of rotten eggs. It's colorless, but it's also flammable. So we want to be really careful that you guys are, acknowledging that. And what happens over time is, though, that you no longer smell it, because your nose gets used to it, or some paralysis happens in the nasal passages. So we want you to be really cognizant of not only using the smell as an indicator that you're being exposed, but also be mindful of some of those symptoms. So I can imagine that many of you experience, there's everything from mild to really some high levels of exposures. And I know USC will be here and talk a little bit more about the environmental pieces of it, but I want to talk a little bit about the health pieces of it. So a population of focus that we want to be really concerned about are those perhaps that have asthma, or have any a pulmonary disease. Obviously, in addition, those are your two high-risk populations that are being exposed to hydrogen sulfide. So if you have family members or children with asthma, be a little bit more diligent and cognizant of, what they're being exposed to, and perhaps monitoring their health, so that you can be sure that they're not experiencing any additional symptoms or negative health effects due to the exposure. So, but also, the elderly, or anyone with, that has any immunocompromised conditions, that it just makes sense if you're, already not feeling well and have any ailments, that additional hazards are just going to be, exponential. So just to be mindful of that. But mild, I'm sure you guys have, many of your neighbors or, community members have been experiencing the headaches, the dizziness, the nausea, the vomiting. Those are all symptoms of hydrogen sulfide exposure. So the things that you really want to watch for are any, digestive issues. In high levels and high concentration, you can actually have convulsions and, be very disoriented. So watch for the early symptoms. Be mindful with the headaches, the fatigue. I want to encourage you to talk to your neighbors, because oftentimes you think, is this real? Is this really happening? And, validate, or perhaps even take a journal of some of the, symptoms that you are feeling and that you are experiencing. And I really want to encourage you in the early phases, if you do smell anything, particularly that's especially at this stage of the game, that there's some challenges. And so what you want to do is, I know that early on they had some mitigation efforts, in terms of filtration or even in your home. But if you do smell anything, close your windows. Make sure that you're not, getting that air into your home. And then also be sure that you're not exercising outside if you're smelling anything. I never want to stand up in front of a group of people and tell them not to exercise, but this is the one time I'm going to encourage you, don't exercise outside, especially if you have any asthma or any pulmonary disease, that you want to be sure that you are protecting yourself. And that you're, sure that there's not any, smells out there. And I also want to encourage you, to watch your health as you move forward. You probably all have known what you've experienced. And let's see, my second slide here is, what do we do now? And I'm only going to talk for a few more minutes, but know that, we're here on the journey with you guys as we move forward to ensure that your health is protected. We're going to talk a lot about some legal issues today, but we also want to make sure that we're looking at you as a whole person, and that you're being mindful to your health and well-being. I've talked about some of the mitigation issues in terms of, just being sure that if you do have any of the, the eyes are going to be your first indicator that something's wrong. So remove yourself from the area. And also wash your eyes out. If you have contact lenses, take them out because they're going to be irritated, and clean them out. Wash your skin with water that that it hasn't been contaminated. And be sure that you're removing yourself from any potential hazards in terms of in the environment, so that you guys are being mindful and that you're not dismissing perhaps some real issues. I also want to talk a little bit just about the mental well-being of that. That, like I said, we've been through enough over the last couple of years. And adding this adds that anxiety. What is going to happen to my family, my children, myself with this exposure? And so be sure that you're, acknowledging that you are talking to your neighbors. In a time of environmental exposure, you guys are going to be the best, the most wisdom in a community, in that is going to be those that are actually living in the exposed environment. And you guys are going to have the information and knowledge, and begin to share that and take notes. Talk to each other, and be sure that, if you are having any symptoms, that you have the resources, whether it's through the faith community or if you need to contact a mental health provider. I encourage you to do that, because it's what we've been experiencing in our country, and then in addition to some of this, is real. So encourage you guys to do that. And then also, as you move forward, and we finally open up the healthcare system. So I know a lot of people have delayed care because of COVID, and may not have gone to see their doctor. But I want to encourage you to partner with your healthcare provider, whether it's a community clinic or a physician, that you have a primary care physician, that you have someone and you talk to them and raise the fact that you have been potentially exposed to hydrogen sulfide, and make sure that they're aware of that, and that they are partnering with you, and they're monitoring any symptoms, so that you can make sure that you are protected. So that's going to be, I think, one of the biggest and strongest assets that you will have is, continuing to make sure that you, are mitigating any of the exposure, and that you don't have any prolonged symptoms. So I know this is pretty high level. I'll be around if you have any additional questions, but I want to make sure that you guys all know that we're here to partner with you. We're here to make sure that you're protected, your families are protected, and your communities are protected, because we shouldn't be experiencing these types of issues. And when we do, we need to make sure that we go into action and that we mitigate what needs to happen. It's not okay in this day and age to have environmental hazards impacting people's health and not address it. We know better, and we have to do better. And we're here and committed to doing that better with you. So with that, I am going to introduce the next speaker. So Dr. Jill Johnson from USC will come up, and she'll talk a little bit more about the environmental hazards. But again, I'm sorry I had to be here today, but I am here if you need me for anything after the conference.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's really nice to be here, and I want to thank Brandy for the invitation to come to this space and come into the community. And I just want to introduce myself a little bit and some of the work of our group. So I'm an environmental epidemiologist and exposure scientist. So I study chemicals and how they impact people's health, primarily in environmental justice communities at the University of Southern California. So I'm in the Keck School of Medicine. And I have been sort of working in the Wilmington, San Pedro, Long Beach area for many years now with the communities to address a lot of issues of air pollution that come from a variety of different sources. And so it was through some of those relationships that back in October, I was asked by some residents of Carson to start talking to them about what the smell was and what's going on. And if you remember, initially a lot of the messaging that came out was like, oh, it's a smell, it's a nuisance, but not really talking about the chemicals as toxicants. And that we know that these are really potent toxics that can impact a lot of different organs in our body. And so I have worked on hydrogen sulfide in communities in eastern North Carolina, where they have a lot of this industrial hog production and causes a lot of hydrogen sulfide releases and odors. If you're familiar with the Salton Sea over in Coachella, that's another place where we see a lot of hydrogen sulfide. And then in South LA, some of the oil and gas drilling sites, there's also a lot here in Carson and in Wilmington, can release hydrogen sulfide. And so in some of those previous studies and work that we've done, we've been able to show that relationship, right, between exposure to hydrogen sulfide and real physical and mental health symptoms. And sometimes this can be, doing a health study can be one tool to really help move towards figuring out what kind of mitigations and solutions are necessary in the community. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that, these kind of studies are only one tool, but the community mobilization and engagement and advocacy is really critical to really try to make those changes that we want to see. And so, what's this here? Are you guys going through that? I don't know if we have slides. But anyway, so we're doing a short health symptom survey right now. Okay. Keep going. Oh, there you go. So yeah, some information out there if anyone is interested. Right now, what we want to do is just try to understand more about the symptoms people were experiencing within kind of the October and November of last year, sort of before it gets a really long time away and we start to forget. And so in our survey, we ask questions around impacts to your sleep, to your breathing, to stress, to whether or not you received air filtration systems, were relocated to hotels. And what we eventually hope to do is use that information sort of at a community level and relate it to all the air pollution monitoring data that we saw from hydrogen sulfide, and so see if we can make an association, right, and document not only some of those immediate symptoms that happened when the levels were really, really high, but also understand more about long-term symptoms. and know like whether this is like just like a one-time event, right? But likely based on all the anecdotes and stories you hear, these effects are lingering. And so we want to just try to help recognize that, document it, synthesize the data, and that can be one piece that can be taken to policymakers, to decision makers, to help sort of mitigate and make sure that we're not experiencing these kind of hydrogen sulfide issues in this area anymore. So happy to answer questions after this event, and thank you for your time.
Okay, I know it's Saturday, so we're almost out of here. I want to introduce the attorneys of the firm, and before I do that, can the volunteers that have been helping make calls and all that, can you just raise your hand for me? They shy over here, you guys. Miss Perkins is the main one, you guys, please. This is all really on a volunteer basis, and we really want to make sure that there are things in place. Sylvia, you're not going to raise your hand over here, Sylvia? Okay. And it's really important that you have people that are in the community that are experiencing what you're experiencing in the community that you can go to. And it's just important to know that they're doing it on their own time for you. Everybody is doing this out of a labor of love for you. So I want to highlight a couple things. Joe is getting up because he know I'll talk. Thank you so much, Joe, for getting up on me. But I wrote down some things about it, and I want to humanize this. So I was very quiet for a little while about a firm because I was doing the homework on a firm and also waiting to be led. And Joe Richardson actually was referred to me by James Thomas, who has circulated the Carson Courier newspaper in our community for several years. So James is a tried and true leader in our community. And so when I talked to Joe, I think we both were in awe because our visions were so parallel as it pertained to what we were looking for, how we could make an impact in the community, and what could be done. And then then he got a call together with everybody, and I can't even begin to name them all, but Mr. Richard McCoon, who is here, he's in the back, he's one of the most humble guys, you guys. He is the head of the firm, and if I tell you, if I text him at 2 o'clock in the morning, he's gonna call me by 6 a.m. And that's the kind of partnership this is, and they're all people of their word. So here's why I chose them. I chose them for their transparency. I chose them for the information that they not only provide, but they go to the distance to provide for you. I chose them because they are committed to creating a foundation in our community. They're here wanting to find out how they can help and then help. The other thing that I like is that they committed to us to make sure that they get it done. If I call, they get it done. If I say something needs to happen, they get it done. That goes an extremely long way. The other thing we talked about is, look, this takes a lot of work. And for them to say, I understand what it is and I'm willing to do this for your community means a lot. And they've done that. And then lastly, they have one of the best track records if you go in and you look to see as it pertains, and they're not afraid to go the distance to make sure that we are taken care of. And that's who we want in our community. So without further ado, I get to introduce Joe Richardson, who was one of the lead counsels on this. He is very knowledgeable in the process, and will tell you what the goal is, how we're gonna get there, and answer any questions. So Joe, thank you so much for being here.
All right, now it's Saturday and everything, but I grew up in the church, so I usually when I'm in the church and I have a mic, the first thing I'm gonna say is, can the church say amen? Amen. Okay, thank you for indulging me there. For those of you who hadn't been in church for a while, I didn't feel so bad, did it? Come on back tomorrow. Pastor, thank you for having us here. Appreciate you, little plug, okay? Don't just come here on Saturday. Come on Sunday too. So by way of background, I'm Joe Richardson. I'm from South Central LA. I'm connected to this area. I used to spend summers in Compton. My favorite place is Louis Burgers on Bullish Road, and I'm digressing. I'm starting to feel that in my back. But anyway, so I'm community connected, and James Thomas, who was on his way, it might be here at some point, pastor of Holy Revival Church here in Carson. We went to church together at Academy Cathedral in Inglewood forever. He's a few years older than me, and he gave me my first shot to do commentary, political commentary, legal commentary in a written form. He said he had a magazine called BEM Magazine, Black Entertainment Magazine. People that are from this area might be familiar with it. So I started writing for him in 1996. Then he started putting out the Carson Courier, and I wrote for the Carson Courier. Most recently, I've written for the Compton Herald. So we're based, the firm has 4 offices in Southern California. We service Los Angeles on a regular basis. And in my case, and in our cases, we really like to help improve communities that we're around, and we like to do it long term. Rich will talk a little bit more about some of the ways that we're planning to do that. So I talk to James because here's the thing. When you come someplace and you come to visit somebody, all right, you like to come through the front door. Okay, and so when we decided we were going to come to Carson, I called James and I said, James, who do I need to talk to? Because we need to come through the front door. Because we don't actually want to come in and stick and move like Sugar Ray Leonard. Even though I love Sugar Ray Leonard, we actually want to do something and make an impact and be connected long term. So I said, who do I need to talk to? And he said, I got 2 words for you, Brandy Murdoch. That was it. I mean, I don't even think he breathed before he did it. I think he finished, before I finished, okay? And so Brandy and I got in contact, and I told her unprompted and unsolicited that our plan is to sue the public entities, okay? For those of you that have been paying attention, you've been reading your mail that you've been getting in the mail or whatever else, until recently, nobody else was talking about suing the public entities. Okay, so there's levels of responsibility, and there's a whole lot of folks responsible. It's very easy and low-hanging fruit to just say that the people that are on the site at the Prologis where the fire happened are the responsible ones, the corporate side folks. However, we think that this is a larger narrative that goes back a long way, including but not limited to the care, or shall I say lack of care, of the channel, the lack of maintenance of the channel. And those are public entity things. And then, as I recall, once this incident happened, the county came out and quickly minimized what was going on, as if maybe you weren't smelling what you were smelling, but even if you were, everything is fine, fantastic, almost like having rotten eggs in your, in your refrigerator. You just throw them away and everything's fine, and there's no health effects. Okay, so we know that there's been some over minimization. Our plan was always to sue the county. I told Brandy that at the very beginning, and I think that distinguished us. And often, relationship, connection, family connection, traditional connection, Christian connection. I think all of that helped with us. Okay, it's really important for us to improve communities. I've known Rich and I've known the folks at this law firm for more than 15 years. And so they came to me about 2 years ago and they said, no, we've done some things that incidentally help people of color, hitting Wells Fargo for $203 million for overdraft fees. Wells Fargo does not like us. None of the banks do, actually, as a matter of fact. But they wanted to do something that was more direct. And they said, we know that you have the community contact to do it. And so let us know what we ought to do, and let's do that. And this department, which is called Racial and Economic Justice, has come from that. And we have a few components. We have cases like this, class actions / mass tort actions, even though this lawsuit is very much a collaborative firm effort across departments. And we do a lot of civil rights and we do a lot of employment work, okay? We, just like the big corporate law firm that provides everything for the corporation, we are the big consumer law firm with resources. I heard somebody say once, I think it was, I forgot her name, but she had a song called There's No Romance Without Finance, right? These cases actually take resources, okay? And so if you can't do, Gwen Guthrie, I'm sorry. So if you can't go all the way, then it's gonna end up being a problem. And so we have gone all the way a long time. We do this type of work all day long. Brandy is really funny. Me and Rich, I have to tell you an honest story. Me and Rich had this whole discussion about, should you mention the fee? I'm totally comfortable mentioning it. Or should I mention the fee? And Brandy mentioned it, so thank you very much. So, but you will know that most folks are charging a much larger fee. We're looking to be community connected on a permanent basis. And so there's a couple things that we want you to get where we have the resources to carry this thing through. We think trial is nuclear. By that I mean trial blows things up. It can. And it takes resources to do. And a lot of times the reason that you avoid trial is because you let folks know that you'll actually do it. Okay, and if they know that you have a reputation to do it, and they know that you will do it if need be, and we don't have any problem doing it, often that gets you the respect that you need. And even though it's a process, 90% of your cases are actually going to resolve somehow before you get to trial, 90%. So often, in terms of dotting our I's, crossing our T's, doing the research, hiring the experts to know what it is that's supposed to go on, where it is that these public entities and private entities came up short, often that's going to create the positioning to get you your result. Also, you'll notice here, a lot of times people think that all of these big cases are class actions. We're doing what's called a mass tort action, and there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, a mass tort action allows everyone's damages to be unique. When you're in a class action, most of the time the damages are very similar, and one of the hurdles you have to jump through is to be able to show the court that there's similar issues of law and fact, and that the representative person that's at the front has damages that are really characteristic of the class. Here we know that person X has very different damages than person Y. And in a mass tort action, now each and every one of those individuals can receive recovery for their damages, even if they're unique to the next person. Okay, so that's why we're doing that on purpose. Okay, so quickly, I'll talk about a couple of the things that we're doing. Brandy, what blew us away about Brandy is that she helped 1,500 people in the community. How many of you were helped by Brandy to get a form filled out? There you go. Come on, give Brandy a hand. Thank you. Thank you. Now that's step number one. When you're suing a public entity, within 6 months, you have to actually file a claim. As a practical matter, they always reject it. Okay, even though under the law you're supposed to do that so that they have a chance to remedy it if they want to. So it either is rejected, some of you probably have gotten your rejections in the mail, or if 45 days after you've sent in the claim, it's not rejected, then it's rejected by operation of law. For those of you that are not part of, have not filed claims or are not engaged by attorneys or whatever else, people that sign up with us, we will do your claims for you. Okay, we have a system in place that allow us to basically push a button and your claim is off into the sunset. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, so there's a matter of filing the claim, having the claim rejected because it always is, statistically speaking. We keep track when we sent it out, et cetera, so that it would, by operation of law, by the 45 days, then that claim is rejected, and therefore now you can file. I don't need to file a claim against a private entity. The private companies, the corporate defendants, I don't need to file a claim against them ahead of time. I can just go ahead and file a lawsuit against them. But because we're suing the public entities, the city, the county, we have to file those claims and have those claims rejected. And by the way, BTW, one of the things, IJS, like my daughter would say, a lot of folks have conversations is low-hanging fruit to sue the folks that did the explosion. I think I mentioned that, the property there or whatever else. But it was our thought, knowing what work it would take, knowing what resources it would take, that this larger narrative is a narrative that needed to be told and was the right thing to do to go after the public entities as well. That's why me and Brandy were singing the same song when I said that to her unprompted, that our plan is to do this. And at that time, nobody else was planning. And in fact, they told her specifically they weren't suing the public entity. Why? Because they wanted to stick and move like Sugar Ray Leonard. Not trying to talk about anybody else, but in any event. This technically gives the government the opportunity to remedy, but they never do. And then therefore the lawsuit gets filed. Okay, so we're filing a lawsuit against all the responsible parties. Okay, public, private, whatever category they may be in, okay? And so what we want you to do is remember, even the Bible talks about tribulation working patience. In other words, giving patience a chance to do its work. You're going to have to be patient. It's going to take a while, okay? Because these lawsuits do take a while, organizationally and otherwise. But know that we have our foot on the gas pedal about doing everything that can possibly be done on your behalf, and we've done it well. We've been here before. I am very particular about making sure that things that pertain to any client, but certainly in a community where folks look like me, is done the right way. We know we are on the line here, okay? And that's why we're trying to bring it through the best way that we can, okay? We'll be back to answer more questions, but I'd like to bring up our managing partner who gave me his heart a couple years ago about coming over to the firm and creating a department, which he allowed us to do. If you look it up, there's no other racial and economic justice law departments within law firms. We're doing something that hasn't been done. We'll continue to do it. We'll also continue to have conversations related to these issues. We do a community legal issues clinic. Look for us. You'll be seeing that come across. So let me introduce Rich McHugh. Rich, come on.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to spend much time here, and I'm certainly not going to sit up here and beat our chest about what we can do and other law firms or anything else. I just want to tell you a little bit about us. Is when I started in, and you can tell from the wrinkles, it's been a while. When I started this a long time ago, we didn't want to be the downtown LA firm. We wanted to be a consumer firm. We wanted to represent people, and in a wide variety of things. And my belief is you can only do that if you're in the community in which the people that need your services are. And that has been our mantra, and it's been my mantra now for over 30 years. And so when we represent people, when we're in a community, we have an office there, we hire people from there, we are part of the community. And that's always been something that's very central to us. So when I first started talking with Brandy, she told me about this wonderful community. And she talked about the community that people knew each other and bonded together and cared about the community, which quite frankly is a little rare in Southern California. That's not a normal community, but it resonated with us. It resonated with Joe, it resonated with us. And so we had further discussions about it, because quite frankly, a case like this takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of money. So, we're one of the 3 or 4 largest firms in Southern California, but all that means is we've been around a long time. But what it does mean is that we are very particular about what cases we get involved in. And that particular part is, I have no interest in being a traveling circus, where we come in, we do our work, we fold up our tents, and we move to the next town. I have been doing this long enough that we don't have to do that, and I don't want to do that. So, to talk with Brandy, Brandy wanted assurances that, listen, if you're here just to come in here, make a few bucks off our community and move on, that's really not what we're looking for, and that resonated with me, because that's not what we're looking for. I want to be part of a community. This case is important, and we're here because this case is important, but I also want to be here 30 years. It's not going to be me, maybe Joe's daughter, but we want to be part of this community for a long time. We're negotiating to set up an office here. We want to hire people. I want to be your law firm for this case, but I also want to be your law firm 20 years from now with whatever your issues are. And you all know with the kind of environmental issues, there's a lot of issues that are going to have to be addressed long after this one went by. So don't want to take too much more of your time. Just wanted to tell you thank you for coming out. Brandy is such a wonderful person, and that's been a definite a blessing to be able to get to know her, and she cares so much about the community. And we're here, and I can tell you we want to be a resource, and we're committed to the area, and we'll be committed to this area for a long time. Thank you.
Were there any questions? I'm not putting anybody on the spot, am I? Like, we family. So I want to make sure I open it up before. And Joe and Rich, are you guys okay with answering those questions? Of course. I just want to make sure I'm respectful.
So this is not necessarily a question, because I figured I was going to come talk to the lawyers. It's more of a public comment, and that is to anyone who has a disability. Please, or if you know of a neighbor who has a disability, please, please make sure to let them know that this is happening. Our city is out of compliance. That much I know. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm my strongest advocate there is. And our city does not have an ADA coordinator, an ADA liaison. And when this was going on, they gave me the worst time possible. They made me feel so just frustrated, and so they were very belittling to our community, those of us who are in the disabled community. This is I'm going to be really honest, this is personal for me. This is very personal, because not only were we dealing with the stress that we were dealing with on top of the pandemic, on top of that, for those of us who have additional stresses in life, they made it 10 times worse. So just wanted to make sure that people know that there's layers upon layers.
I appreciate that. I want to make this comment really quickly. I believe in handling things amicably. That's really important to me. However, I also believe in change, right? And so what I want you to understand, and what you'll get, and you can probably already feel this from the attorneys, is this is not a bash fest. This is not a this is not bloodbath, right? We're simply saying, we've been damaged, this is what happened, and we expect you to do better next time. And to get people to move, we know how to get people to move. And if we don't do it, we can't complain about something happening later. We're on the cusp of COVID right now, and the least we should have, it was a cheat sheet, is an emergency plan. We don't have an emergency plan. And I've asked for it, we've talked about it, and there still is not an emergency plan, you guys. These are things that are crucial. And so that's the reason why we're here today. And I needed to make sure that I conveyed that, okay? Anybody else have another question?
Smell in the water, because our water, it has like that rotten egg smell. Nobody?
Yes, I have a funny taste.
Yeah. We like scared to drink the water.
Did you want to say something about that?
My point of talking to your neighbors and community to confirm that, but if you do detect that, make sure that you're contacting and testing the water before you're drinking it. Because you want to be careful that you're not ingesting.
And then I just had a real expensive filter, the water softener all through the house. And when we had the big smell, I told them don't do it until it died down, and it still smells real strong.
And you can contact the EPA if they have tell them, if you have it tested to get filtration systems. And I know that USC will be in the background.
What sort of documentation do I need to prepare myself with to prove this case or something? Because my daughter experienced, and I blame it on the smell. It was penetrating into our walls, into our home, waking us up from sleep. And I took her, she missed 2 weeks of school, not consecutively. There was a break in between the 2 weeks, but I took her to her pediatrician, and my concern are her lungs, is her congestion, is her all these really bad respiratory illnesses that she was showing for that week related to the smell? And the doctor said no, there's no proof. And I said, well, because I have a healthy 5-year-old. She's full of life, and just that month it was horrible for all of us in the house. And the pediatrician just waved it off like, no, it has nothing to do with the smell. So I have the proof that I took her to the doctor, but it wasn't documented that what she was dealing with was effects of the smell that we were living with. So I don't have that type. What sort of documentations do I need?
Respectfully, you might need another pediatrician because you know your child, okay? And so if I'm you and you can, I'm not making any presumptions about resources and things like that. If you get a second opinion, or that type of thing, if you know that there's a before and an after, I think the things that you want to do are document that before and after in the best way you possibly can, even on a day-to-day basis. Today, I write 2 lines, she's fine today. Tomorrow, she's fine. Is there any correlation between what's going on outside? Is there a smell outside on those days that she's bad? It's almost like you got to do a little bit of detective work that you would do anyway. But you might think about, getting a second opinion. And then there is a matter of, as we go along here, I think that there's going to be more information that's going to be gathered with the USC folks and through our public health piece and everything that's really going to give us a sense for some of the causation issues that are going on here. Because as you know what all the potential defendants and the defendants are going to be saying is that there's no causation. That's them. That's what they're going to say, and they're going to harp on that. And so part of what we do, there's a matter of your individual investigation with your family, with your children, for yourself, and those types of things. But there's also a matter of, I think there's potential for expert testimony to bring some things out and things like that. But I always say this, and go with me here. Whenever there's an incident and something happens to you, I always say, treat it like you fell out of a tree and it's nobody else's fault. In other words, you have one body, you have to deal with it the best way that you can. And if it's different than how it was, leave no stone unturned to find out why it's different and what it'll take to get it back there. So you start from there, and now we're looking over your shoulder, getting the information as you get it, and those types of things. But I would leave no stone unturned if you know that there's a difference between now and then.
I just want to piggyback on what the lady said up there about her daughter. I have a 16-year-old son who has asthma, but never had any really serious medical problems. He had a headache. It was just constant. I took him to his pediatrician. He went to the doctor, urgent care, pediatrician, 2 emergency room visits. The last emergency room visit, they came in and asked him, was he depressed? They want to blame his issues on his mental health. Well, yeah, maybe he was depressed because he wasn't feeling good. Debilitating headaches, nauseous, would not eat. I understand what you say, get another pediatrician, but when you're in Kaiser, it's difficult. I get emotional about it because just seeing your child laying there, not eating. He lost 30 pounds. 30 pounds. It's difficult, and so my health problems didn't mean anything when you're worried about your child. And so my question is, will you guys provide a different way for us to see a doctor? Because I just firmly believe that some doctors just don't believe. Like, they were just like, hey, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. I mean, was seeing a neurologist. They were trying to issue all these different medications, which I don't want him taking all of this stuff when you can't tell me exactly what the problem is. And so that's what I'm looking for. He still has occasional headaches. We're back here, and I spoke with Brandy. She's a dear friend of mine. But like I said, I want to know if the problem is still existing. Are they putting a lipstick on a pig? Or are they just perfuming this channel so that we don't smell it, but the problem is still here? These are the concerns that I have. I mean, I get, as the first doctor was saying, your health means everything. Money, what good is it if you're sick and you're too sick to spend it? So I really want to know, is the problem still going on? Are we still being poisoned? And where do we go from that point?
Thank you. Well, Michelle, I'm so sorry about your child. That's just that just feels horrible, and I can't imagine, just the pain that feeling helpless. I can't promise to change the healthcare system, although, trust me, I've tried in my life. But I want to share with you one thing, just going back to what Joe was saying about the pediatrician. In Flint, Michigan, it's very similar. I mean, for a long time, no one was listening to the contamination in the water. And it was a pediatrician who was educated about what was going on, and that started documenting the surveillance of some of the conditions that really made the difference. And when she testified in front of the city, people listened. And, so perhaps we can, you can't change how Kaiser works, but certainly how you're advocating and raising awareness and sharing some information about the contamination or the exposure that your children have had. And then let's, start talking to each other and sharing information with pediatricians and, perhaps some of your physicians that you guys are collectively seeing so that we can raise awareness.
And let me just follow up on that just for a couple of minutes. We often represent clients that aren't receiving a proper medical care for that. And from a legal standpoint, it's not appropriate for us to be providing the doctors who will say certain things. But what we have often done in areas where there are very complex medical issues is get doctors familiar with complex medical issues to provide consulting backup information, who then can work with the treating doctors to help educate, like Dora was indicating. One of the ways that we did that, we represented a number of families who lost kids from carbon monoxide associated with boats, and nobody knew anything about it. We got an expert physician who understood the symptoms and then started educating people in the community. And so that's one of the ways to do that. On the whether it's being perfumed or not, that's one of the things that happens in a lawsuit. Is you don't have to just accept anybody's word for it. You can go do discovery, and we will do discovery, and I'll be in a much better position to answer your questions that are very important questions when we start getting the internal documents, we start taking depositions, start questioning the right people, and we'll find that out.
I don't know if folks are aware, but right there by 213th Street in the channel, the AQMD, which is the agency that regulates air quality, set up a monitor. And so that helped measure the levels of hydrogen sulfide since mid-October. It took them a while to set it up. They want to take that down, right? So we've been trying to make sure they keep that monitor up, because that then takes away this really important source of data for the community to be able to see those measurements and those levels and what's in the air. So just thinking about all the issues, but like one thing or one place to also get involved is making sure that the AQMD is not walking away from the problem either, because I agree they've been putting these kind of solvents over the channel, but they do kind of a similar thing in some of these oil and gas sites, and it just covers up the issues, right? It doesn't mean that the chemicals are gone away.
You can smell that deodorizer.
I started to ask the question. I've been talking with a lot of residents who, for various reasons, thought they had signed retainers with the other attorney firm, and now finding out they don't know what their status is. But I guess my question would be, can they speak with this law firm, and would there be any issues as far as them getting rid of their retainers with the other law firm and signing up here? That was my first question. And how long do they have to do that? And then just to kind of address some of the other issues. I don't have children. I have lots of nieces and nephews, extended family. Some of them have been hospitalized for respiratory infections. I'm kind of known as the dog person. I was pushing for animals to be included in emergency relocation services, and they were not. I lost one. As someone who lives on her own and having her furry four-pod family go before your eyes because of the same symptoms, the nausea, the vomiting, the respiratory infections, and me experiencing those at the same time, that's something that very definitely Brandy brought up. City of Carson needs to get on their emergency plan and have this in place. We don't need to wait for another emergency to start scrambling around to find out what they're going to do. I would encourage all of you to make your comments. The Environmental Commission has been resurrected of sorts. They're discussing what their priorities are going to be. I think it's important for all of you to speak up, because they're going to be making recommendations to the council. So they need to hear more voices. They need to hear more residents speaking up. And just on a other side note, I'm still getting waves of something coming into my house once or twice a week, maybe more. It seems like at 10 to 12 hour intervals. I know this because I start coughing and sneezing and have all of the symptoms. My VOC sensors go off, and I have to run all air purifiers at top speed. And just an example, I work at El Camino College. They have a daily screening routine. You have to answer your questionnaire before you can enter campus. I've not been able to get back onto campus, and I've had to continue working remotely because my symptoms that I check off every day, they're flagging as COVID. So this is really, really important, and my prayers, and I'm with all of you in however I can be.
Yes, my name is Brian. I was just concerned about the fact that there's a lot of us having problems with medical problems and being able to prove those problems, not necessarily knowing exactly if that's pertaining to what's going on over there, but knowing more than likely a lot of stuff that's going on over there is not healthy for us. And we're having problems here anyway. And I was just mainly concerned about the fact that the slurry's been there for decades, sitting there, that mud swamp, and it just decided to break open and start bringing a lot of other elements to us. Now, being underneath the ground, so to speak, it can be affecting water and everything else that's there that could possibly affect us in a way that we might not know that it's actually bothering us. This just was something that occurred to make us wake up and realize we got something sitting in our backyard that's not healthy for us. So just saying that, and I don't know.
One of the challenges in the lawsuits that involve environmental areas is it's often a combination of a number of things, but the law recognizes that. The law recognizes that what might not harm some person that does not have asthma might with somebody with asthma, and it's not a defense to say, well, gee, you had asthma. So from a law, it's called causation in the law, and it's a challenge to be able to separate, and we have to be able to prove by what's called a preponderance of the evidence, which is 51%, that it was at least a factor in the health problems. It doesn't have to be 100%. But it has to be at least a contributing factor, and you have to prove that by 51%. So it's a great issue. It's a challenging issue when there's a variety of things that may be involved, but that's best I can do on that.
The other way is you can visit murdochcommunity.org, and the form is there as well with the information for the law firm, so we can track it if you've done that form and it's gone over to them. And then you can also have someone that can assist with following up with you. We're on the same page with that, right, Mr. McKee? So if you want to go to murdochcommunity.org, you can go there, and the paperwork is there, and it will go straight to the law firm, but we'll also have a copy of it.
Hi, my name is Billy Miller, and I just want to know, is there anyone in here that's having problems with their skin as far as bruising? Bruising, and that's about it. Maybe burning every once in a while. I went to my provider. I got medication for it, the data and everything, but it seems not to be working, and it's on my face and my neck, and it's just dark skin. So, I don't know if it's coming from the smell or the environmental, but I never had this problem before.
Sylvia here. I suffer from psoriasis, and I've had psoriasis since I was about 12 years old. And when this whole smell started, I used to tell my husband, I feel because my skin is very sensitive, very, very sensitive. I feel cold to an extreme. I feel heat to an extreme. And it's because of the condition of my skin. So there was days where I would tell my husband, you know what it feels like when you use Easy Off and it floats and lands on your skin, you feel like little burnings. That's what I was feeling. And he was like, oh no, the smell's just getting to your head. But it really was. My legs broke out, my arms broke out, I was broke out all over my neck, my chest, everything. But just the feeling that something was landing and burning, like Easy Off. I mean, I have no other way to explain it than when you use Easy Off to use your oven and it lands on you. That's the burn that I was feeling. And we live right by Victoria Park, so the smell off of Main and in the Goodyear Blimp area was so bad. So bad. But yes, I did feel stuff on my skin.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Please make sure you stop also for the survey as well. That's a huge piece of it. And then for other questions, murdochcommunity.org, you'll see things coming up in the community. And if you have questions, the information is there as well. All right, have a good day, everybody.